Okay, we've hit a milestone. To kind of start, by the way, I see that like my glasses are reflective. You'll have to excuse if my eyes are glimmering when there's a white screen. Maybe I should get some glasses that doesn't reflect as much. Is that possible? It's interesting. Anyways, so what we're gonna do is just summarize what we've actually done here, and I'm gonna demo this stuff tomorrow to the team as well. So I'm gonna use this. So the first approach I did with thinking about an agent, that was to have like a single agent, and that agent was responsible for interpreting user request, flush out details on implementation plan, and implement, and basically validate, debug. So this agent did all of this stuff. And what's important to think about here is that a single point of prompt engineering, no state. So there was like prompt engineering for this general behavior. No state. It was a moving context window. So you never knew during the conversation when you kind of lost context. Because, yeah, and I was using Assistance API. By the way, there's a new version of the Assistance API that was just released, which is really exciting. But I actually don't think the Assistance API works for what we're trying to do here. I think the Assistance API works when you actually do want a single agent. But we don't actually want that, which I'll explain. Moving context window, Assistance API. Yeah, something like that. So this was the first approach. And then our second approach was to have agents workflow. So what we would rather do here is that we would create or identify what workflows is part of actually implementing something in a web application. So we would have like user stories. That's like the first step. And then we would have implementation plan or specification. And then we have actual implementation. And then we have, thinking about this as an actual user experience, we also have debugging. So that's a different workflow. And you could think about things like analytics, for example. That's a different workflow. And then you might say like debugging preview, I guess. So those are like identified workflows. But the thing is, within each workflow, there is multiple agents. So you would have a product manager. We have a UX engineer. Well, we have an engineer, UX engineer, and also I added a tech lead, which validates the user stories for ambiguity. So we're gonna do a tiny iteration on this flow just to test something. But then we have, so we haven't fleshed out these yet. That's what we're gonna do, actually start doing now. Oops. But the point is that every agent is prompt specifically. So the product manager, even though it's a product manager role, it's prompt specifically to suggest the initial user stories. Oh yeah. functions and text response. It's prompt specifically to handle user stories. So it will suggest user stories, and it will kind of ask you to help you. That's what we're going to iterate on here, is that it should suggest initial user stories, but it should also like identify like core tenets of a web application. So have you thought about persistence? Have you thought about permissions? Have you thought about like storage maybe? I guess that's related to persistence, but like these, what other tenets are there in like web applications? Yeah, persistence, like it's the permissions. You could say responsiveness. Like these are like general things you think about in a web application, which the product manager is going to help the user flush out in their user stories. And then that's passed to the engineer, and the engineer is prompt to think about, based on these user stories, how does the application state change? And this is really interesting because I played around with this. I tried to prompt it with like, could you define like the functionality? Like the point is what happens when you click the different buttons and stuff. And funny enough, being like normally very engaged in state management, and I built a lot of libraries with state management, that was a really good way to make it flush out the user stories with how does the state of the application change, or what's the expected state change of the application within these user stories. So what it would do then is like actually say that when you click the button to add the task to the list. It wouldn't necessarily have that information. Anyways, so it's an engineer, but it's a very specific scenario. And then it passes it to the UX engineer, and the UX engineer is prompt not to like find the specific components or anything like that. It's just there to identify what web elements should be included in the user story. So if the user story is about describing, give a description to a task, it would say use an input to describe the task. So then we have that, and maybe there are other things we can do here to flesh them out even more. But I was really happy with the result. And then finally it passes it to the tech lead, and the tech lead, like a tech lead can do many different things, but here it's prompt specifically to look at the user stories and determine if there's any ambiguity. And then I haven't implemented what happens if there is ambiguity. Like should the user just interact with the tech lead? I'm thinking like in real life you will probably do that, because it's typically at this point it should be small details, so we can try that. But the point is it when I tested it, it did point out ambiguity, so that's really good. And then the point is that what we did through this is that we made it stateful, so every agent has state. So that means that you get predictable. It's like calling an API and defining its response. So the general state or response through these agents is that they have a list of user stories. But for example, the tech lead also has a state that is like ambiguity report. So if there is an ambiguity report there, we return that as a response to the user. And if there is no ambiguity report, we just return everything looks good, ready to go. So that's what we're going to do with the product manager. It shouldn't only have user stories, it should also have like a suggestions report or something like that to help it, like to prompt it to actually not only suggest user stories, but also ask the user to like, have you thought about this kind of stuff? So the stateful part of these agents is what makes it possible to interact programmatically with the result of the agents. So normally the only way to respond or interact with the response of an agent is to write text, but that isn't a good user experience. Normally, like if you actually want to discuss with an agent, that's amazing, and it's so amazing to use natural language to actually engage with something with an AI. But what we're able to do when they're stateful is that we can consume that state in an actual UI. So instead of writing text to change or prompt to change the user stories, we can use checkboxes. We can let the user just change the text of each user story, and then just click a button to prompt whatever agent is active to update their user stories, which I find very interesting. And I think this is a really important part. It's like when we start consuming these agents, the way we interact with them shouldn't only be by text. We need to interact with them with other visual tools. And to do that, we need to have some shared state between the actual user and the agents. And then what I also try to do here is isolated context. So instead of, since these agents kind of live on their own, like as a user, you see this thread of conversation, but it's really, I wanted to see if when we have this state, can these agents do valuable, give valuable feedback in isolation? So as long as they know their state, can they do something? As opposed to if they have the thread of conversation, that's when they become able to do something, if that makes sense. That wasn't a very good explanation, but I wanted to see how small of a context window we can create. And now it's like super tiny. The only thing the agents know is their current message. Yes, or their state and the prompt from the user. And sometimes not even that. When an agent talks to an agent, it just says, this is your state, and then the agent runs without any prompt. It just has state. And this works surprisingly well, at least for what I've been testing, which is not like insanely extensive, but it's pretty cool how it works. And then I did explore priming, that's what I'm calling it. Let's put that here, which is basically building up a bigger context for the agent. Like every agent has a description, description to priming. So every agent has a description, which is what I write the description, right? You are a fantastic product manager who cares deeply about fleshed out user stories or whatever, like a very simple description, which has an effect, but it could have way more, like it won't know that. So this is the interesting part. If I say you are a product manager, it doesn't know how to be a product manager. To some extent, it guides the response of the agent, but to be better at being a product manager, you have to say you are a product manager and ask it a question. What does it mean to be a product manager? And then it will give like maybe a quite big, extensive response about what it's like to be a product manager. And that is going to guide it to do the proper thing with the user stories and everything. Or that's like the theory. And then you can build on that. Like, so you can ask it in general, how, what does it mean to be a product manager? And then you could prime it again and say, how would you approach product management in this application? And then it would take into account the application summary and then answer that question, and then you could ask more questions. So it's really just building up what it means to be that role. But funny enough, I didn't find that to be it have much effect. Maybe I need like to embed more, like it needs more specific embeddings about the application or whatever, but I didn't find it, or at least in the user story workflow, I didn't find it to really help much. And maybe that's because user stories are quite generic and high level and isn't very specific to the current application. So maybe the priming will show more promise when we move to a different workflow. But it's an interesting concept. And then another thing I want to mention here, or we're gonna mention, is how to make them better. But then I didn't use I'm using the completions API instead. So I completely control the context window. So basically we send in, currently if we prime it, it will bring the priming into the conversation of your prompt. So it kind of, what's it called? Like you have an array you pass in, right? And typically that array is just your prompt. But in this case, we have like a preceding conversation, which are the priming questions, which we put into the context. So it just gives, yeah. So we have full control of the actual context. And this is the great thing about version 2 of the Assistance API, is that you have so much more control now of the context window. You can set the size of it. You can like force certain function calls, and the retrieval is way better. I was like, I saw this video yesterday and I was like, yeah, I just spent 300 freaking euros with GPT-4 on the Assistance API. What the fuck? So that's a really cool thing that I fixed that. But for what we're doing here, doing retrieval doesn't make any sense, because these are going to be generalized agents, and maybe we could like, I guess what we could do is we could do, yeah, this is what I'm reflecting on, like trying the Assistance API again after they fixed this stuff. Because then what we could do is that we could put like the Firebase documentation, Tailwind CSS examples, and all that stuff. We could actually put that into the retrieval of an assistant, and then we can actually prompt it as part of running the assistant thread to actually do the retrieval. And I think we can even define what retrieval it should do. So that there might be something there, but we're not really building an assistant. We're building like this team of agents. So we'll see what happens there. But another thing that was really interesting about that video is fine-tuning. So fine-tuning is basically example conversations. So yeah, that's what we're going to look at. I'm not sure how fine-tuning actually works. Let's look at, oh, that was a key. Let me delete that key. God damn it. Fine-tuning is, so I have never done this, but the way I understand this is that you can choose GPT-5 Turbo, and then you basically give it example conversations, and then you have a fine-tuned model that you can actually point to. Yeah, output model name. So now you have this special model that is fine-tuned. And what's super interesting, which where the hell did the thing go? There we go. What's super interesting is that when you have these very specific agents, they're prompt for very specific conversations. Like, it's not a product manager that can talk about anything. It's just about user stories. You have an engineer that only flushes out user stories with state management related things. It's possible to create it's possible to run these agents in isolation with GPT-4. And then you just copy that conversation into a file, and then you have multiple conversations just doing exactly the thing they're primed to do or prompted to do. And you run these conversations through GPT-4, and then you put them into fine-tuning of a GPT 3.5 model. And as I understand it, that is actually how they intend this to work. Like GPT-4 will always require way more, is like typically more capable than what you need, which means you're using more compute than what you need, you're paying more than what you need. So the way I understood it is use GPT-4 to optimize fine-tuning, which I find really interesting about like us betting on GPT 3.5. Maybe they'll find an algorithm that like halvens the compute of like these models, which it probably will at some point, but it's like an interesting approach. So fine-tuning agent conversations with GPT-4. So then you would have one model for the user story product manager, one model for the engineer, one model for the UX engineer, one model for the tech lead. And those models will be highly optimized for their specific prompt using GPT-4. So then you have GPT 3.5 running on this, but they have a model optimized with GPT-4. I have no idea the actual effect of that, how good it is, but it's such an cool thing to do. So we're gonna try that at some point. I think that's it. Like we have some minor learnings as well, like using enums instead of booleans because enums represent natural language in a better way. Another thing we learned is like don't use the agents. Like when you first have stateful agents, you're kind of splitting up the workflows. How should I put this? So what I meant is like initially with the user story steps, it would be the product manager that decided that it was good to go for the engineer. But now when you click the approve button, we just go and run the engineer. Like we don't have to make these agents part of, like they don't have to be the driver of everything. Just make your application stateful, where you combine the state of the actual agents running, and then you can combine user interaction in the app with the state of the agents, and then you do what's best. Like the agents needs to fill up natural language in the state, but the user can use buttons and other UI to also change the state. And together, I think that creates like a good user experience. Is the theory, but we're kind of seeing signs of this already. Other ways to make these prompt engineering. So we've been playing around with prompt engineering for each of the agents, but the good thing is that it's scoped, right? So instead of having like doing prompt engineering for this generic agent that's going to do anything within a web application, it's just doesn't make any sense. But when you do prompt engineering for a product manager evaluating user stories, that's something you can engineer and create more predictable results. It's much easier to do that. It's much easier to fine tune that. Like it just, gets better. Okay, I'm eager to code. Let's jump into coding. So what we're going to start with, like we just have to wrap up the user story flow. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to give the product manager what should we call it? Suggestions. We're going to string suggestions for improved user stories. So when it starts out and we're generating the prompt, if we don't have any user stories, we're gonna prompt it to create some suggested user stories. And here we have some examples, but with fine tuning, we wouldn't have to do that. And then if we already have some user stories, we're gonna update the user stories. And I think regardless of what it's doing, we want it to populate these suggestions. Let's see, suggestions. And then a state of suggestions, or and this is also a cool thing, is like when you have state instead of relying on natural language, you can also respond more predictably to the user. So here we rather say, okay, if we have natural language, which is suggestions, return that. And if we don't have that, return this text, which maybe feels a little bit wrong, like because we have this AI that can create natural language, but it makes it way more predictable because you can't guarantee what's being put in here. I am happy with these user stories. We're just gonna see if it actually just populates some suggestions here. Maybe we don't even need to prompt it. Cool. And then the question is, when we get to the tech lead, and the tech lead, so let's look at the tech lead. So the tech lead has can implement, and then ambiguity report. So if can implement is false, what do we want to do then? Do we want the user to be able to interact with the tech lead? Or so we could say here, if there is no prompt, it means that it was just handed over the user stories. If there is a prompt, it means that the user is trying to talk to the agent. So what we could do is say, if there is a prompt, we could tell it to update the user stories. So we can try that first, and then like it will iterate until the agent is happy with the level of ambiguity. So let's try that. So if there is a prompt, we're gonna say help me update the user stories to remove any ambiguity. Yeah, let's see what happens here. So we just want to complete this flow, and what we're going to do next is actually type out the different workflows and present them in the UI. And then we're going to actually store the user story, implement the ability to, so when you approve the final thing, or actually we're we're actually going to, when the tech leads moves to the can implement state, we're just going to immediately store the user stories and then show like the user stories on that tab, like the user stories tab. And then you will click a button to implement, and then you move to the implementation tab, or maybe we should just flip out the UI. I don't know how this is going to look. But that's going to be awesome. That's going to be huge. Cool. Okay, so let's try this. So let's just try something very ambiguous. I want task management. As a user, I want to assign tasks to. Oh, did we forget about the permissions and persistent stuff? Yeah, we did. Anyways. But I don't want due dates. I don't want to assign tasks to team members. It's kind of funny that it suggests that. Like, because it does know. Oh, it didn't actually go and grab the application overview here. That's interesting. Should probably prompt it to always do that. Because it should suggest these. Okay, we're going to do that. I thought I had that in the prompt. Always get an overview of the application. Then I want help to create user stories for this. Okay, I do wonder what it would do if I started asking for features that are already in the application. Would it like even pick that up? I want task management. I want to create a new task in the task management system. Yeah, I do. Just calling it system was a little bit, yeah, but we're not gonna do not use the word system. As a user, I want to assign a task to a specific. No. I want to set a due. No. I want to mark. Yeah. I want to view all tasks. And let's just change that. I want to filter based on their status. Okay, yes. And receive a notification. No. Oh, interesting. Consider adding user story related to task person, task dependency, task comments, and task attachments for a more comprehensive. This is good. Like, this is what I was hoping. But I wanted to be more specific about. Oh, this is interesting. So this is really good. Like, this is exactly like what kind of experiences can the user have? That's what I wanted to suggest. But when we move to the engineer, I really wanted to ask about persistence and stuff. Like, give actual suggestions. So we can try using the suggestions there as well. But anyways, I want to view. Let's, as user, I want to delete a task. Let's see what it says now. Yeah, but this is fine. You can still give your suggestions. It's a little bit weird with the task management system, but okay, let's approve it. And then it hands it over to the engineer. As user, I want to create a new task. I want to mark. Oh, interesting. Wait. It's still a product manager. Do I have a bug? Wait, this is. I approve these user stories. This is wrong. This is an old. Wait a minute. What happened now? Did we build it? I don't think we have the latest version. I have to remember when I change devices, I need to rerun the build steps. Yeah, I don't think we actually had the, but still it was using the, it was giving the suggestion. Maybe that was because the last version. I want task management. I'm a bit confused. So clicking approve should just move directly to the next one. No, it was I am happy with these user stories. Why didn't it move to the next? Why did it say I am happy with these? Oh, you know what? Maybe what it could be it had built the Electron app, but it hadn't updated the front end, because the front end is what handles the button click. Like either it sends a message or it actually sends like approval of the user stories. I want to filter task. No. Let's just do this. Okay, approve. Wait, what's happening here? This is not how it's supposed to. I approve. We're missing something here. What the hell? Where is my code? This should be like approve user stories. What the hell is happening here? We're missing some code. Okay, I'm exceptionally confused by this. How the hell did that happen? I'm having like a... How did this happen? So this should be API approve user stories. This is super weird. Anyways, let's try again. What the hell did that... How did that happen? Maybe it was a merge issue. But I looked at my other computer and it also had this. But I was playing with this just last night. Wow, that's so weird. Let's just insert a little bit better, more defined one, so we get some better. Or yeah, seems good to go. Yeah, and they do. It's a good list of user stories. There we go. Yeah, so now we're at the that's so weird. So now we're at the engineer. I want to discuss so that I can provide details about the task. I want to add a task to the list. We should update the list of tasks with the new task. As user, I want to see the list of tasks so that I can view all the tasks in the list. As user, I want to delete tasks in there. We should remove the selected task from the list of tasks. Great. So here I want to explore like creating a suggestion on persistence and permissions, like more technical nature. I'm a little bit like I'm happy with the result already, and I kind of want to move on, but okay, I can't help myself. So where's the... Wait a minute. What the fuck happened now? Where's the suggestions? Okay, what's happening? Where I had suggestions here. Oh, sorry. Stash pop. God damn. Oh my god. I'm going crazy. Approve user stories. Okay. God damn it. So UX engineer. Suggestions would be suggestions for what would a UX engineer suggest for improved user interface. We're going to just do it very simple. Include user example user stories. So if we have no prompt, it's just going to do... Yeah, because I didn't actually... No, I didn't do anything. I just added suggestions there. And then as part of the response, so we're just going to add that, and then I'm happy. So part of the response is suggestions or nothing. Well, let's just return the suggestions. Suggestions for improved state management. And here I want to be for persistence, permissions, what kind of stuff would you yeah, so this would be suggestions for... I want to be more specific. Style, responsiveness, etc. Like this can be improved. For persistence, permissions, etc. Yeah, that doesn't have any suggestions. That's just an ambiguity report. I think we're missing... Yeah, just fix this. And even here, like you could hard code these suggestions. Like maybe it doesn't make sense to even make it generate the suggestion, because it's like you could just ask the user, what do you think about persistence and permissions? Like that could be the default response. Like this is the thing, like we don't have to use agents for everything. Okay, cool. Let's... Oh. Is it building? Yeah, I guess it didn't have any... Oh, interesting. I didn't think I... does engineer have anything about ambiguity? Oh. Oh, sorry, that's the tech lead. Engineer. Yeah. But... Oh, didn't I... So I'm not sure that the description of suggestions... the description of the suggestions actually is enough for it to kind of prompt itself to what the suggestions should be. We might have to like actually prompt it. But anyways, it's a task in application state. Blah, blah, blah. Approve. As a user, I want to describe tasks using a text input field so I can provide details. Oh, did I? I did return the suggestions here. Yeah, so it didn't have any suggestions, which is fine. I just wanted to try it. To click add task button to add task to the list, we should update the list of tasks displayed in a visually appealing manner in the user interface. Scrollable list form so I can view all tasks currently stored in the application state. Yeah, but this is great. Approve that, and then we have the tech lead. He says we're ready to go. Like, and I would agree. Like this is a good set of user stories. So can implement true. There's no ambiguity in the user stories. The implementation can proceed as described. Great. And you can imagine here, like fine-tuning a model for ambiguity reports of user stories, right? That's pretty cool, using GPT-4. That's pretty cool. But then what we're gonna do is, here we are actually going to save a file. So let's move into our agents flow. And where is our actual flow? Handle prompts. No. On the previous stories. Where is our on agent completed? There we go. If agent role equals tech lead and agent.state. This is the cool thing, right? With stateful agents, you can do stuff like this. Can implement. We're going to take the user stories and we're just going to store them in a file. So for now, we're just going to say fs. I don't know. Do I have fs here? Let's just do write file sync. I wonder why it says, I don't know what original fs is. Like, why isn't it using fs? I find that weird. What is original fs? And it's going to write it to well, path. Do we have path here? No. Import. Let's clean up a little bit here. Import start as path from path. Let's jump back down. Path join this .workspace path with I think this is where I have it. Where do I have the actual? Is it in utils? Yeah, web assistant folder name. Yeah, so I should probably, like, there's so many things I can do to improve this code. Like, we can have like a file system that's bound to the workspace path. But yeah, anyways. And then let's just call it user stories JSON. And what we're going to write here is a stringification of agent state user stories to evaluate null2. Cool. So now we're going to run through this again, and we should see a file popping up. And what we're also going to do here, we're going to flip the state. But yeah, anyways, for now, let's just... What's good about this is now we'll open the application with a set of user stories we're happy with. So we can start testing the next flow, which is going to be nice. Let's just... oh, I just need to help a colleague with something. Nice, let's see. Oh, interesting. Okay, anyways, let's see if I want to, for editing tasks in list and marking tasks as completed. This is amazing. Approve. Yeah, for some reason it reads it more than once. No idea why it does that. And I want to describe that and oh, interesting. In the backend database, we got... How random is this engineer? engineer, where are you? Product manager, UX engineer. You have a temperature. I think this temperature should be way lower. Yeah. But I think it suggested this now because it read the application features description. Oh, this is interesting. And have the changes reflected in real time. So when it read the this is interesting. So if it doesn't read the application overview, it will give more general advice about state management. But when it reads the application overview, like it knows Firebase is in there, it will start making suggestions related to Firebase. So you could argue, no, it shouldn't actually have the application overview because this should just be general advice about state management. But then again, yeah, you know what? I think that's the right choice because user stories should not be like the only specific thing I want related to the existing nature of the application is that you don't add the same feature again. Other than that, it should be like general advice. So I'm not going to let this engineer have access to the application overview. And I want it to be yeah, like it shouldn't have a high. This is not very creative work. It should be very low. But it should still suggest like persistence and permissions and stuff, but more generally, right? It's more in the actual. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe the tech lead should. Anyways, we can iterate on this forever. There's so much potential for improvement here. But you could say like the engineer kind of goes in and does a general assessment of state management, and then you have the tech lead that goes in with the application overview. It knows it's Firebase, and it would like specify more how to do it. But you could also argue this is part of the implementation plan. So let's do that for now. Okay, we're gonna try again. Just gonna approve a PR. Okay, cool. Open. Boop. Oh my god, this is exactly what I had in mind. Yeah, great. But we're not going to do that. So script doesn't have stored in the application state, reflected in the application. Consider implementing a backend database to persist the task and their state changes for better data management. Okay, this is interesting. Because in the context of this application, we have Firebase, but if I tell it we have Firebase, it will start suggesting Firebase stuff. You know what? I'm gonna try something. Suggestions for Firebase persistence. Permissions. I'm just going to say Firebase. So that it knows that we have Firebase. Yeah, so the point is when the suggestions has a pointer to Firebase, it's different than the context having knowledge about Firebase. So it won't update the user stories with Firebase specific things. Wow, this is so interesting. But I think this is it. Like this is engineering part of using these agents. Like we have to create these experiences and be very specific about how they should work. So what should we put into the context? What should we put into the function call descriptions? Like all that stuff to give the best possible experience. As a user, when we store in the want to describe, which will store in the task description field. As user, I want to add a task, which will add the task to this task, which will display all tasks in the list. As you want to delete that, we implement Firebase persistence to store tasks in their descriptions. And they're just also think about implement to restrict access to certain tasks. Yeah, so this is the thing. Like, it's a user story. I wanted to. Maybe I shouldn't use technical terms. Suggestions for. So I shouldn't say persistence, because persistent is like heavily loaded technical term. But it is persistence. Like there's no better way to. For. I'm just gonna keep the same like state management concept here. And then we're gonna be happy about that. I don't want to jinx it, but the JSON response is really good. Update the task array. I want to see the list of tasks from the task array. It's still quite technical. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how to balance this in terms of user experience. But this is important. This is important, I think, for a good implementation plan. Because this is about the behavior of the application. You can argue it's like when it says array, it leaks heavily into an implementation plan. But what's important here is that as a user, I want to describe a task and have it stored in a list. Like that's the point. You're saying that you actually want that task to be stored, not just describe a task. It's really important information. That it's like an array. That's too technical for what I want for this part of the experience. But it's better that it's a bit too technical than being ambiguous. So I think that's fine. And you can also say array is like, even though we know that as a technical term, it also is a non-technical term. But yeah. As a user, I want to try to use a text input field and click and to start. So you want to see a visual appealing list of tasks displayed on the screen with each task item showing the task description and an option to delete it. As a user, I want to add a task list by entry. Wait, what did you do? Oh, it just changed the order. I want to see a visual appealing list showing the task description. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it just says that you should be able to describe the task and then you should also be able to add it. So yeah, that's fine. I want to add task by entering the task and clicking that button to update the task array and visually display the new task in the list. So user I want to easily identify and select a task to delete by having a delete button next to each. This is really, really good, I think. And then let's see what the tech lead says. We are ready to go. Did it store it? What's this? Impact. Yeah, this is some old stuff. User stories. Whoop-de-doo. Here they are. Okay, so now we're gonna flip it around. Now we're gonna introduce some state to the app. So let's jump back into the code. And I think I started doing this. Yeah, so we have type user, let's just call it user stories. And this flow actually has some user stories. Which is a string array, is approved, Boolean. So what I'm thinking is that yeah, we'll keep these user stories up to date. And then when it's approved, we remove like the actual chat interface and we just list the user stories. And then we create a button like implement or something. Yeah. So how are we going to code this? So one challenging thing here is that we have this agents flow that has a lot of information now, and then we have the workspace where this thing really should be. But let's start there. So what we need to do, we need to build the initial state. And do we have... Yeah, so what is the initial state? I really hate this when you want to have an initial state. And yeah, this should really be part of the workspace builder, I think. Yeah, so the workspace builder should send the initial state so that we can choose based on what files are available. Like, is there a user stories file? You're gonna go into that workspace state. If there is no user stories file, but there is like a... Or should it maybe always start in like a debug mode where you kind of just see the application and then you kind of have these tabs? Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, so we're gonna have a flow of yeah, it's just gonna be easier to implement. So let's create a flow of type debug. So, or maybe we should call it preview. Because it's like when you open it up and you actually have an application, you kind of just want to see the application and then see, I'm thinking you should see the development logs, or at least if there are any errors. Because that would kind of be like you jumping in, playing around with the application. Yeah, let's just say that's the default mode. And then we would have errors. That's enough. And then we can flip over to user stories. And when we do that, we have like a message going from the client to Electron, open user stories, and then we asynchronously read the file and set the correct state of user stories. So let's just get this flow state out to the client first. Flow type debug. And we're not going to deal with the errors yet. That's like for later. On send. Yeah. So this is related to drawing. Like if you're drawing and you're sending a prompt, it should move away from drawing. And this is probably gonna change, but let's just keep that for now. Oh no. My my mouse stopped working. Okay, so let's. Oh, I just have to move this around so I can charge my. Oh my god. Charge my mouse. Oh, there you are. So what I can't remember now is in this workspace, do we have we have mode. So this is the, okay, this is chat panel. So I think we're calling it chat panel. Okay, let's keep chat panel. But we need to change a bit how we pass the messages in there. So we're gonna have a more generic chat panel. I think so. Yeah, so this is interesting. So we need to implement a chat panel per. So when we do the implementation plan, that's also going to be a chat panel, but it's going to be a different flow with different agents and probably different interactions we want to have there. So we have to make, oh my god, this is going to be. This is going to be some work. We have to make the chat panel generic or like stateless. And then we need to pass in, we need to create like a user stories chat panel that uses the stateless components or like pure components, and then builds the specific agents and stuff around that. Yeah, so maybe we should start there. So what we have access to here is workspace state.flow type, and we can check this if it's debug or user stories. Debug, and then we can choose what we want to render. But now we really need the exact. So we need user stories tsx, yeah, or user stories flow tsx, and then new file debug flow tsx. Return debug flow. Yeah, and this is interesting because it's within, yeah, anyways. And then user stories flow, user stories flow. Cool. Oh my god. Oh my god. And in the workspace, we are, yeah, let's make this check now. So let child content react node. We're gonna switch on the workspace state flow type, and if it's debug, we're gonna say content equals debug flow break. And user stories, I never understood why you have to use break, because if the case is debug, it can't be anything else. But you get into issues, like it jumps into the default. Oh yeah, so yeah, but that makes sense. But I think I've seen that if you don't break it, yeah, maybe it just goes into the default. So you kind of want to say, if this is the case, do this, but also do this default thing. That makes a lot of sense. I just never actually used that. And this would be user stories flow. Yes. And I have another question is like, should this flow state have the messages and everything? And then we'll just update the flow state, like the actual workspace state when there are changes. Or do we keep our current approach where we have a specific extraction of the current messages? So that's more like requires more code. Like we need, it's not just messages, it will be like user story flow messages. But it does make it faster, right? Because it doesn't have to reconcile all of this stuff. We'll see what we do. And we're actually just going to remove this. And then we're going to say content. Oh yeah, because even this is like, this is wrong. This is about what's this? Reload. Oh yeah, so this is actually part of debug. So let's just do that. Debug flow. Because in how we're gonna do this. So let's just shove that in here first. Do we have Excalibur with image? Excalibur with image. So it's curious about, let's just pass the workspace state in here for now. And we're gonna give it the editor store. Oh, it doesn't use it here now. And then a workspace state. I think we could just oh yeah, so we have, oh interesting. So we have something called a chat store provider. That doesn't make any sense now. We should really have one store. So what do we want to do here? We don't want messages here. And we don't want the embedder state either. How I want to do this? I think I want a store for each of the flows. Well, embedder state, that's something we want generally available. But these messages, they are specific. The messages are specific to the flow. Let's remove messages for now. And I don't really use the embedder state. So what we're going to do is look at the chat store. What does it actually do? Okay, it keeps the messages. So we're going to rename this to user stories store. let's see, new folder, user stories. We're gonna move this in here. We're gonna move the chat store into user stories, and we're gonna call it user stories. User stories store. Rename user story store provider, use user story store. Use user stories store. Should really be flow. User stories store. Okay. We don't want the embedder state here, actually. So we're not gonna have the embedder state. Yeah. We don't care about that. And then in the workspace, we are gonna put the user stories. Let's see. Oops. User story store provider around the thing that it provides, and messages here would be the state management of this thing. It's a complicated app. How do I want this to work? So maybe yeah, I think we're gonna just handle this, the asynchronicity here quite directly. So where's the store? Where's the didn't I have workspace store? So the messages here, we're gonna remove them from here. So like Impact is a state management tool that came out of work at Code Sandbox, and I'm still exploring like patterns in terms of, because it can handle like modern asynchronicity patterns in React, but those haven't really been like settled yet. So there's still like room for exploration there. And I'm curious about like, because these signals, they allow you to have promises. But that means when I consume them, we have to use the use hook, which means that we need to do suspense. But it makes a lot of sense to, like, if you have asynchronous values, consume them as asynchronous values. And then at the point of asynchronous consumption, you can decide how you want to deal with that asynchronicity. Do you want to use suspense, or do you want to check the actual status of the promise? I think that makes a lot of sense. The issue is if there's a large part of your app that's going to be using this asynchronous value, and then you don't want to like use the use hook all over the place. In that case, you just want to like have a store that already has the value resolved, and then you want to share that with the rest of the UI. So I guess that's the thing. It's like start out by just consuming the asynchronous value, but if you see that you start consuming it asynchronously, like deeply nested in the UI, and you get into the situation where you're consuming it with the use hook in a component, and you know it's already been resolved, like there's no chance that it would actually have a loading state, then you can evaluate, okay, maybe we shouldn't consume it asynchronously here. Maybe we should just do that higher up in the component tree and then expose the resolved value to the rest of the component tree. Yeah. So this doesn't really have any props. And I think at least for exploring an application, you just want to do that. And it's so easy to do it as well. So yeah, let's do that. So we have the user stories, store provider, and then we also need a debug. Let's see, new folder, debug, or debug. Let's rename this. Oh, let's call it debug. That's fine. So in this case, we want a new file, debug store, function debug store, return blah blah blah, export const use debug store equals use store, debug store export const debug store provider equals create store provider debug store. Cool. Yeah, let's just expose this first. Debug store provider. Bloop. And debug flow needs access to the workspace state. So the question now is, well, it doesn't need access to the actual workspace state, I think. It needs access to the mode. So what we can do here, which I think makes more sense, is that we're going to pass in the workspace state, props. So that would be workspace state. And this is like the initial well, the mode. That's the thing we want. Mode. It's actually the initial mode. And then we're going to say const mode equals signal props mode, initial mode, sorry. And then we need listener here. So we're going to do const disposer, and we're going to say, well, we need the editor store. Use editor store and editor store API on workspace state updated. And then I think we're just gonna workspace state. We're just gonna update. Like the workspace might update with other things than the actual mode, but we're just gonna set it now. And then we have a disposer, so we're gonna use a cleanup to get rid of. Oh, dispose our workspace state listener, or workspace on dispose on workspace state updated. That's like the real name of it. Yeah. Cool. Well, maybe we can just, you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna do cleanup. Crazy. So now we have the mode. I'm gonna turn mode value. So now we can use this. Let's see here. We want to pass in the initial mode, which would be workspace state mode. Oh, and I don't know. Yeah, so we're not gonna have anything here, but we're gonna consume the debug store, which is use debug store, and then we're gonna see debug store mode instead. Nice. Okay, happy about this. Oh. I guess that's deeper down now. Okay, nice. So we're back at it. So what we're gonna do now is let's see. Yeah, we're not using the embedder state, so let's just drop that. So we have debugger store provider, our user story store provider. So we need to draw out the debug UI, and the debug UI has it doesn't really have any content. So the chat panel currently has, what's the, okay, so I think debug flow can just have, I think it can actually just be this. And then this, hello debug. So I think if we start it up now, it should show that debug thing. Yeah, nice. And then we'd like the browser next to it. Now the question is, so the point here is that if you are in user stories mode, we why isn't it wider? Chat panel, does it have any? Oh, where is the main one? User stories, chat message. Where's the main one? New chat message, chat panel. This is it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have a general UI where you have like the sidebar and then you have the main content. So what we can do is we can just move this outside. And I guess this one also needs to return. Let's see. So workspace. Oh, damn it. So they rendered different. Oh, God damn it. Okay, think we'll just make that like a wrapper. So let's create like a new. So we have workspace and then workspace content wrapper. Export function workspace content wrapper, which should take some children. React node, and then we'll return this thing. This is the wrapper. Yeah, so this should be. It's almost like oh, this isn't workspace content wrapper. I'm thinking about like, how do I split? I kind of need, God, how do I want to do this? Like, working with UI for me is like, should I just have a wrapper for the left sidebar, or should I have like a workspace content wrapper, and then I have like sidebar is a React node, and then main. Let's just do that. It feels more correct. And then this would be sidebar, and then we would have, I think main would just be like this, and then in workspace. We have this thing. Yeah, okay, I like this. So let's remove this completely. And then we're gonna do... No, wait. Oh yeah, no, I think I like this. I think maybe. So we're gonna do this. Because it's flex. So this one should just take up the rest of the space. Yeah, let's try this. So we have workspace, and then we can just return this. So we can say return. Why can't you return this? Is it because of the break? Interesting. Return. No. Okay. Oh, it understands that. Nice. So now in the debug flow, we're going to use the workspace content wrapper. So return workspace content wrapper. There's probably so many better ways to do this. And then we're going to say the sidebar is currently, we're just going to inline it. And then main is this thing. There we go. And then we have user stories flow, which is also going to use workspace content wrapper. And it's going to be sidebar. And then main. Hello there. Yeah, so the thing is, it's only during user stories you're going to be drawing. So, oh, that's interesting. So we don't actually need a flow here. Oh, annoying. So let's put that in here. Let's move that in here. And then there is no, we're just going to do... Yeah, so this width and stuff, this is related to like adding a capture. So this was because you could capture the app and you could draw on top of it to like ask the Vision API or to use drawings to help you like make changes. But the Vision API is really expensive. So we're going to try to do this without using the Vision API, or if we use it, we're going to use it for like, yeah, we're going to try. We're going to play more with that, but that's like way later, I think. As I said, I've been like all over the flow here to figure out how this should work. So main here should actually be this. And then, okay, so editor store, use editor store. I haven't drawn it. I listed it. It's kind of a list currently. But yeah, I could create a drawing of what I have in my mind. Oh, I hope they're okay. But yeah, no worries on the email. Take your time, and as you said, you get a lot out of it just writing it. So yeah, no rush on my end. Yeah, I think we're kind of, because we've been kind of deep into like how should a specific agent work? Well, kind of the milestone we've hit now is like, okay, how should these agents work together? So I'm not sure if I started this stream with actually going through like where we're at. So that was kind of drawing up the agentic flow, but it was more like summarizing our learnings and what the intention was moving forward. But I kind of have an image in my head. I should probably draw this out so everyone can kind of see this. But I'm just gonna do this refactor first, yeah, because I'm gonna run a demo tomorrow, and then I have an idea on how that demo should run, so we could draw that up. Yes, I am. I'm also sure I'm gonna like how you handle states. Like for me, like state management has been like, I guess it's kind of been, because when I started programming, like building user experiences, I've always worked with editor like experiences. Like my first project was I can't quite remember it, but it was like an editor where you could write code and you could like build something in the web. Yeah, and this is like many years ago, and that requires a lot of state management. So that's when I got into like how to properly handle state management, and this was like even before React came out. I am not saying that React has like solved state management in any way. Maybe it's even made it worse in some sense. Like but yeah, but state management in general is very intriguing to me. Yeah, I'm thinking about so the agents I'm building, they are stateful. Well, they aren't stateful. Like it depends on how you look at it. So the agents themselves aren't stateful. But I'm just using state to communicate or generating prompts instead of using text from the user to generate to have like a broad prompt. Like it can be like anything. I have the state to generate the prompt, which makes it more predictable. But also user language, of course. So it's balancing that, like predictability using state to produce the prompts, and then having the flexibility of the user updating that state. Yeah, I think like when we talk, we should probably draw it up. My toy problem, it's I want someone who doesn't know how to code to build and deploy a web application. So they can say like I don't want it. The thing is, I don't want them to just say, I want a to-dos list, and then it generates that to-dos list for you, because I don't think that works. I want a person who doesn't know how to code to go in and start from there, to say, I want a to-dos list. And then you have these workflows and these agents that actually helps you get through that. But it's not open-ended. It's not like the agents chooses the technology and everything. Like that just doesn't work. That's why I'm using Firebase, because if the agents are going to choose the technology stack for you, then they also need to, like, it's so unpredictable. There's so many different services out there. Some of them requires interaction. Well, all of them requires interaction from the user, because you have to sign into a service. You have to register for it. You might have to pay for it. Like if the agents were just going to suggest stuff based on randomness, it wouldn't work. But with Firebase, I can make this application and I can create an experience for the user where they create a new project and guide them to the Firebase console, because most people have a Google account. They can create a Firebase project, and I ask them to upload the service account file. And if they do that, then there's a really good basis for these agents to actually get you through everything related to persistence, storage, authentication, deployment. All can be done through this app because it has access to it. And the only thing the user needed was a Google account, as opposed to having like a completely clean slate and the agent could come up with any kind of like service. So yeah, that's how I think about it. What were we doing? Yeah, I'm gonna remove. We're just gonna have the Excalibur draw image here, but we're not gonna have the width and the height and all that stuff. Image source. Did I remove that as well? Yeah. So we're not. I want to kind of keep this. I don't want to remove it. So let's just comment it out. Let's see. Image source. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I see it as well. Like you need agents for all of them. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, so for me, like it's important to have, like, the ultimate goal is for a coder agent to be able to code. But I don't think you can make a coder agent effective without having a really what's it called, non-ambiguous instruction. Like, so that's what I'm starting with user stories, because that's where everything starts. In the sense that you have someone who doesn't know how to code, who wants something created by a coder. So you have to make that like super ambiguous request to something extremely concrete to even have any success with a coder. So, but that's a very specific type of experience. Like, if you want an experience where a coder asks like you actually know how to code and you prompt an agent to do something, you as an engineer, you are really good at defining that instruction. I don't see how you can get from a completely ambiguous prompt directly to a coder and it does a good job. So I guess that's what I'm going at first. Like, how do you generate good instruction for a coder? Yeah. But when you say human validation, yeah, so that's interesting. Like, if in your experience, when you prompted that this set of agents, or like the starting point to build this application where you didn't write a line of code, how much required your engineering skill to get the agents through it? Because I guess you did a lot of validation and maybe even changed some details to help them get through it. Because I think that's a good experience, but still you will need an engineer to build something. Yeah, but so to put it like this, do you think a non-coder could be able to build something with what you've built now? And I'm not saying that's a goal at all. Just curious. Or do you think you still need to be an engineer to get through it? Because that's what I'm wondering. Like, what if you can create a set of agents that's able to, Like you never get away with the validation. But the validation loop that I created here is more like the only thing the user does is interact with the application. And then I'm using Electron to read runtime logs. So the way the validation worked before is like the agent went through, wrote some code. It never worked on the first go, typically. But I would interact with the app. Something didn't work. I didn't see any logs or anything. It just didn't work. And then I wrote to the agent, it doesn't work. And the agent would read the runtime logs and typically fix the issue. Yeah, but I love this because then you take it from the perspective of the coder and making it like, okay, you need to be a coder currently to make that work, but then work up towards like, how can you make a non-coder be able to interact with this? And I'm kind of doing the opposite. I'm like, okay, how can you take a non-coder? How can you create such a good instruction as possible using agents so that you have the highest chance of success when you actually provide it to a coder? Like it will never be perfect. Like you always need that validation, but how can you reduce the amount of validation? I guess that's what I'm thinking. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad approach at all. Yeah, but I think the biggest challenge is to give a good, like talking about non-coders, how do you give a good validation loop for non-coders? And the only thing I've been able to actually create is to read runtime logs of the web application. So the agent asks the user to try the application. And when something doesn't work, they can just hit a button or write back what didn't work. And then they use runtime logs to validate. I even gave it access to capture the the actual web application. So maybe you signed in and you got into like a very different state in the app. And then something went wrong. And you would just say something didn't work. And you could write like, when I clicked the button, nothing happened, for example. And then it will capture the page and it will read the runtime logs. And based on that, it will be able to fix stuff. Agents to help you build it. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's an interesting approach. Like I never thought about it from the perspective of, okay, let's create a good coder first, so that coder can help me build the rest of the application. That's really cool. I just had, yeah, I think I was a bit discouraged with like copilots and stuff because it just felt bad. Like the experience as a coder interacting with an agent just felt bad. So then I kind of flip sided and I thought, oh, maybe what if you explore not having to interact with agents at all? But that's like, as we're talking about now, that's not possible, at least not now. You need to have the feedback loop, validation, and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm very curious about the state management you do, and I'm also very curious about what you think about the validation loop. Like the agent has actually written some, or the agents has actually written some code for you, and now you're there sitting as a user going to interact with the thing the agents did. What's the user experience of continuing that validation journey with the agents? Yeah, that's yeah. I love that. That's really cool. Yeah, because I work at Code Sandbox, so we have like this infrastructure of micro VMs where you can just import your repo. You have a micro VM that runs that repo, and then we have this amazing technology that allows you to fork VMs, like literally copy the memory and disk of a VM like in under 2 seconds. So when you create a branch on Code Sandbox, you actually get you look at your default branch, you click a button, and you get a brand new VM, which is a direct continuation of the disk and memory. So if your default branch is running a dev server and everything, you just click a button and that dev server continues at the exact same point in under 2 seconds in a brand new environment. The point is, when you think about AI agents and environments, that's a really interesting thing, because then you can go and run an agents flow in this locked environment or representing a branch of your project. So that's kind of what that would be amazing to try to create something like that. So you could basically, even from your local VS Code or whatever editor you're using, you could just start interacting with agents, but they will do work in the cloud on a VM and not like taking any computer power from you or like working in the actual workspace where you are working. They will just work on a branch in the cloud. But then you would have to communicate with them. They would have to respond to you. You would have to do the planning. And when they've done something, you want to know about it. And then you want to run the validation and all that stuff. And reverse chant. The feedback loop until I explicitly validate. How does the feedback loop? Because the feedback loop is automatic. Like for how long do you allow the feedback loop to go? Do you does it just go until you click something, or do you every time there's a loop, do you go in and tell it to continue looping, or you validate? Like how do you do that? Reverse chatbot. Yeah, that's an interesting concept. Reverse chatbot. Yeah, and that's what you want, right? That's what I'm imagining here. Is like at the end of you've done something, and then instead of you prompting the agents to do something, they start prompting you to do something, so that they can validate. But yeah, I do wonder if there is a world where it will be possible to have an agent that actually is able to navigate a web UI in some way. But at the end of the day, if that web application is built for humans, you want a human to validate it, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Can't you make a video? It would be awesome to kind of see it in action. Let's see, image element. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. And then we don't. Can I do this? Yeah, nice. Okay, so now we have. Where's this coming from? Is that also part of the debug flow? Oh, what did I do here? Oh yeah, so this is. Yeah, sorry. So this should be part of the debug. Why is this? Oh, This should not be okay. So we have mode now. Oh yeah, of course. So this typing is all wrong now. The mode should be part of. So we have mode. Yeah. So debug is loading preview. Yeah, we don't really have a mode anymore now. So let's remove mode and clean that up. Yeah, I would love to stream it on my channel. Do you? Yeah, you have a YouTube channel? Do you have videos and do you do streaming and stuff or? Yeah, no, we don't need that anymore. Oh, so this would be if oh my god, flow type equals debug, I guess should be the one now. Is flow this state flow is loading preview. True. Oh, this is boring stuff. So it's gonna be a little bit boring because I'm gonna have to change a lot of stuff. But maybe I can make it fun. It's loading preview false. So this is just the preview window where I have like a loading indication. On set draw mode. Okay, so we don't really have this anymore. But we do have capture page. Okay, we're just gonna comment this out for now. Oh, because we might need this stuff at some point. So handle onset preview mode. Like I don't have the preview currently, so we're gonna add that later. So mode here is nothing. Is loading preview. True, I guess. What's a little bit annoying now is when I zoom in the app here to make things more bigger. If I run a view here, like an electron view, it doesn't zoom, which is really annoying. But anyways, we don't need a view right now, so that's fine. Let's see. I think we're good on that part. And then there is no mode. So let's remove the mode. There is no mode. Oh. Oh yeah. God damn it. We need the debug flow. So initial flow state. So export type. You know, building proof of concepts, I spend a lot of time typing. It's kind of annoying. I wonder how much productivity loss I have doing all this typing during proof of concepting. But still, if the proof of concept is going to grow into something, you need the typing there to go beyond it. But maybe then you should just build it from scratch. Yeah. Anyways, debug flow. And then type. Oh, export type user stories flow. Oh my god, it's so slow. Debug flow or user stories flow. So now I can import the debug flow, and that's gonna be my initial flow state, and then we're just gonna call it state, and then we're gonna clean up editor store API on workspace updated workspace state, and then if workspace state dot flow type equals debug, then we're gonna update it. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And then in the debug flow, we now have debug store state is loading preview. Boom. And then we still need the initial flow state, which will be workspace state.flow. Cool. Great. So now if we open the workspace, so what we're gonna do now, we're gonna add some tabs here. So we're gonna have like user stories, implementation plan. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Building from scratch, I like, for me, like, people are different. I kind of like, through experiences like going at school and doing different projects, being in different teams and all that stuff, you have people who loves, like, you have like 3 phases of a project. You have the start, you have the middle, and you have the end. And people seem to be tuned to specific phases. Like, I'm a starter. I love starting from scratch, exploring something, and I have no problem throwing it away just to start again with all the new knowledge. But I can have a hard time going through the middle phase, and I definitely have a hard time going through the final phase of a project. It's like my motivation just drops as getting into these middle and final phases. But yeah, other people are really, really good at wrapping up projects and also just dealing with the small incrementations that happens in the middle, and just enjoys that. Yeah. Have you ever finished a project? Let's see. What was I thinking? Yeah, so currently, okay, let's do a little Excalibur on this, because what I'm thinking currently, as like the first interaction of this, is like, you have, this is the flow space, flow workflow. This is workflow, and then you have output, workflow output. Oh, this is kind of, okay, you're right. I should have done this sooner. This is how I think about it. Originally, I was thinking about like having, you can choose your workflow here. I have an idea, which would basically be creating user stories. And then you would have like a list of user stories, and you could create a new, you have a list of ideas being represented by user stories, and you can create a new idea, which would be the chat interaction I've been showing, that ends up in a new idea, which is just a set of user stories. And then you have specs, for example. So that would be, you could have a list of specs, and then you could move an idea into generating a new spec. But I'm not sure if this makes sense. Like, why would you have multiple specs at the same time? If you implement one spec, the other ideas go stale and needs to be revalidated based on the new implementation, stuff like that. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna say that the workflow can be, I choose what the state is. So now if you have some user stories, you'll be in the implementation workflow. And then when you're done with the implementation, you'll move into like the implementation plan. When you have an implementation plan, you move into the implementation workflow, and that's what you see here. And when an implementation plan has been implemented, you go into the debug workflow or validation workflow. But you probably want to move between them. But this is more like about what it makes sense as a user experience. So, but for now, we're focused on actually exploring the flows. An agent as function that does the same. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Like, so for example, when you look at so basically like describing this, yeah, now I see what I mean, like an agent as a function. Yeah, so you will kind of think of the product manager, like create agent, it will return a function, you could call that function, and it will return state. So you kind of, yeah. So it's kind of like a component in that sense. Like if you think about the component model, like React and stuff, you just give it its current state and it will return new state. I guess it's not like, it's not pure in the sense that it will always generate the same output based on its input. But it's a function regardless. Yeah, and that's really what it does. This is just kind of configuring. Yeah. And that's really what I'm doing here as well. I haven't thought about it like that. It's just, since you can't like call objects as functions in JavaScript, as you mentioned, I'm kind of doing this instead. So I'm saying run agent engineer with this state, and it will produce new state. That is its final result. But it's not like I'm not kind of returning it here. That would be really cool though. Yeah, I really like that concept. Think of them as functions. Oh, router agent. Yeah, because that's the examples you've shown, like where you have like the XML syntax. That's your router. Yeah, because I've been thinking about that. Like, how do you? So the reason I do it programmatically is because I don't know. Like when you go declarative, like you reduce, like it's less flexible than programmatic, but it's way more readable and like composable. But there are like some restrictions in place there, which are typically good. Like when you know that you have a good declarative abstraction, then it's definitely a good thing. But I don't know how it would look like. So I'm kind of, for learning purposes, I'm doing it programmatically now because I don't want any restrictions and I don't want to think about the overhead of creating a good declarative API. But yeah, I would love to see a way to like just describe how they interact together. Yeah, that's super interesting. yeah, invoke agents based on their state. That makes a lot of sense. But that's where what I found is that, like, through the interactions, like just creating this user story flow where I have one agent like representing the product manager, then an engineer, then a UX engineer, then a tech lead, like being prompted differently and contributing with different things to the user stories. What I noticed is that, well, yeah, but as you said, like you can require how do you express that in the router? So you can choose to route like one agent to another agent. Well, not route the agent, but route the flow from one agent to another agent based on state. But I guess you can also define in that router, no, I want human interaction to move to the next agent. Okay, so but do you when you say an agent has a state, it's always a markdown list. Do you find it constraining? Like, would you want? Have you found yourself wanting other types of state than markdown lists? Oh, all the agents it can use. Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're just way past where I am. I'm still like figuring out what an agent is, and then somewhat stepping my toes into how they can interact with each other and how the user is involved in that interaction. Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense to that, like the final result of that is something way more declarative at a way higher abstraction, where you have these, as you say, like you define more of a some declarative abstraction, call it a router or whatever, where you at least describe the interactions between the agents and where does the user need to interfere and stuff like that. Yeah, because I will, like with the implementation step, I will do this programmatically, just because that's where I'm at. Just to see, I think I've always done that with like other APIs that's ended up declaratively. Instead, I've always approached it programmatically first, and then just to kind of understand the problem space. Yeah. So I guess that's the thing. I'm still trying to understand the problem space, but this is really cool stuff. I'm very eager to see more from it. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, please continue writing. I'm just making sure I get through this refactor. So now we have, basically this is the debug flow now, which will have the actual application running here. Currently there is no browser view here because it overlaps with me zooming in. So let's forget about that, because what we're going to do is I think, yeah, let's how should we do this? Maybe I should have those tabs here. Yeah, I'm gonna create the tabs. I'm gonna change my mind on that. So we're gonna have, so the active tab is like debug or preview or whatever we want to call it. So that's where you start. And then what I'm going to allow you to do is to move to idea. But idea is currently going to be, since we already created user stories, clicking on idea is going to read those user stories and just display them. And then you can discard that idea and create a new one, but you can only work on one idea at a time. And then implementation, this is going to be disabled because you don't have an idea yet, or spec. I mean, it's a little bit weird, the UI here, but we have to start with something. And yeah, this is disabled. And then you would have implementation, impl, which is also disabled because you don't have any spec. So what we're going to implement now is we've started in debug. We're going to allow it to click on idea to see the idea. But this is also interesting. God damn it. Because you have to know, you shouldn't click the idea. This is really only me just not wanting to have async initialization of the workspace state. Ugh. Oh, wait a minute. No, I did decide to use the workspace builder to initialize with the initial state. Okay, no matter. So we're going to have each of the workflows is going to exist in the workspace with its state, with its current state. And then we just choose the current workflow, and that changes the UI. So we're going to use the workspace builder to generate the state of each flow, because it needs to read files and it needs to happen asynchronously. So then when the workspace initializes, it knows the state of all the workflows and can like display that properly. Oh, your prompts are general. That's super interesting fact. Because yeah, you see my prompts are like 300 tokens, but that's more just, yeah, minimizing, like iterating, like minimizing and iterating and see what's the least amount of tokens and power you can do to do something to in this case reducing some ambiguity. But I would imagine that that's way more realistic to have much larger prompts. Well, I don't. So the way I think about this is I don't think about the user interacting with agents. I think about the user interacting with workflows. And the agents is something behind the scenes. And you would rather have like you would have UI you use that implicitly interacts with agents. Wow, 12K. Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, I'm actually kind of seeing this as almost like you shouldn't feel like you're chatting with agents at all. It's almost like it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe. It's primarily you just have these very explicit interaction points. So for example, when you have an idea, it's almost like having a submit form. So you submit your idea, and then these agents will work in the background to kind of just give you a state of your idea and give suggestions, but you're not using natural language necessarily to do the adjustments to the user stories. You're just, yeah. It's hard to explain, but we're getting there, and it's going to make more sense. Like I'm going to be able to better explain what I have in my mind as we move forward. Yeah, like I think so I don't want like to create, I'm not motivated to create like a Copilot kind of experience. I want to see if I can hide Yeah, I just want to see how far you can go creating something before. So at some point you will have like a copilot-ish interaction with an agent during like the coding, I would imagine. But I want to see how far you can get describing what it should do without like talking about code or anything. Well, something, you have to talk about something, but not code at least. So that would be like, for me, like we're here, we're on idea. How do you create a good way to interact, to create and to define an idea? And then the next step is like, how do you create a good user experience when there is an idea and you want to create a specification out of that idea? And then it's like, okay, if you have a good journey creating a specification for an idea, how do you create a good experience implementing that specification? And I have no idea to what level the user needs to interact here with the agents. But what my theory is the better the idea is described, the better the specification is. And the better the specification is, the less you have to interact with the agents during implementation. But at some point, you do have to interact with them. I do expect that. I don't think it will magically work. Like, this is just like real life. You can try to define. Well, it's kind of interesting. I think this points to, like, I've learned that the Eastern and the Western world has a fundamental difference in how they do work. In the Western world, we do 20% planning and 80% implementation. In the Eastern world, they do 80% planning and 20% implementation. Like, as a almost philosophical approach to work. And I think that's what I'm trying to do here. It's like, what if we do 80, what if idea and specification could represent 80% planning? And what does that experience look like? So that there's like less effort in the implementation. Well, how I feel about the current copilots, and if you just have a coding agent, you'll be doing 20% planning to do 80% implementation. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of where my mindset is. But yeah, this is certainly like firing some reflections on my end, like how I'm approaching this. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, but I think I like this analogy. At least it helps me describe what's in my mind. It's like there is a certain amount of planning and a certain amount of implementation, and they do affect each other. You cannot like plan. There's a, you can't, like, it's not like the more you plan, the better the implementation is. There's like a cap to how much planning you should do. And it depends on the problem space as well, of course. But I know that you should try to reach for that cap in terms of planning, because it will make the implementation better and more smooth. And there's less like ambiguity, there's less risk of mistakes, and so on and so on. Yeah, anyways, let's introduce my magical tabs. I need some what's it called? Components. Do they have some tab components? Yeah, it might be a risk. Like what could very, very well happen here is like, okay, so I'm working on these interactions, blah blah blah, the spec, and then I get to the implementation, and it just falls completely flat because the coding agent in and of itself just isn't good enough. It doesn't matter how good the specification is, it will just fall flat. That might be, and that might discourage me. But I also think if I can get through that, I think I just think the coder will perform better just because you have such a more detailed, specific description or prompt of what you want the coder to do. Like it's all about context, right? And a reduction of ambiguity. And if I am to prompt the implementer what to do, I'm, as a human alone, I'm going to have so much ambiguity, and I can't write, like you can end up with a specification that's like maybe like 2000 tokens long or something. I would never write that as a human. But with agents, you can write these like massive detailed specifications, and maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe, I don't know. But maybe you could look at it like this. Like there's a certain, okay, this is an interesting thought experiment. So you have a coding agent or agent workflow, and there are a certain amount of tokens it needs to go through to be able to implement something. Where does those tokens come from? Do they come from the user? Do they come from other agents specifying what the coding agent should do? Does it come from validation? That's an interesting thought experiment. Yeah. Because do you have a step where you like flush out? Do you have agents where you flush out the instructions first? Or do you like go straight ahead and kind of prompt the coder agent to like, you should do this and then you should do this? And I understand like there are steps it evaluates, but where are those steps coming from? Is it like other agents? Let's see. Oh, look at these tabs. Amazing. I want those. Oh, those are nice tabs. Give me tabs in brand color. That's perfect. Yeah, let me just copy everything. Let's see. Okay, so we have a sidebar. I guess that should be here then. And then we have, maybe we should pass in. This is kind of annoying. So I want this to be, so currently workspace, God damn it. Currently workspace content wrapper is consumed within a specific flow, but I want the tabs to be across flows. So this is definitely not the right thing. I think I need to have, yeah, I think I just need a sidebar wrapper. Dag nagit. So let's just go workflow tabs tsx export function workflow tabs. Let's just paste this. So let's just rename this to sidebar content wrapper, like that, or sidebar wrapper. And then we're gonna say children here. Dag nugget. And children. Oh, sorry. Children. Remove this. And this is gonna be part of the main workspace now. Oh, we have to go back to the content React node. And then it will be content equals and content equals break. That's div with content, and then we're gonna have the sidebar wrapper. Sidebar wrapper is gonna be used here. There we go, and then the Excalibur draw thingy. Let me just copy that thing, and then we have chatbot debug. Oh my god, this is boring. Cyber Excalibur with image. So this is hello. Return. This is not Excalibur with image. This is this div. Okay. So we have our debug flow. We have our workflow tabs, which means the side. Wait a minute. This is still wrong. How the fudge do I do this? How do I want to compose this? My Torfront must call yourself a web interface with history and streams. I can interact. Sometimes I have a harder time composing UIs than just think about like state management and deeper stuff. So these tabs, the contents of the sidebar and the main part is like, yeah, I think it's just the UI messing me up, because this part is like, that's part of the general flow state, but this is a specific, the contents here is of course based on what you see here, but since this thing is like outside of this, I'm kind of, yeah, just feels a bit weird. I want to define on the inside what's here and what's here in a component called like idea or user story flow. But because of how the UI is here, I have to like pass in from the outside what's here and what's here. It's so weird. I don't like that. Because then so you would kind of have user stories sidebar and user stories. Oh my god, there has to be a better way to do this. It's almost like I want this to just be, maybe I should just change how it's displayed in terms of, maybe it should just be absolute. Oh my god, I can't believe this. My brain is so stuck on this. Because I want the store provider to wrap both the sidebar and the main window. So I want, it has to be, yeah. Okay. Okay. Fine. Export function, debug flow sidebar, export function, debug flow main. And then we're gonna do return, and there's no sidebar wrapper here. And then we're gonna do this, not this, but this. Oh, this is super annoying. And then we're gonna move these up here. Cool. And then I'm gonna do the same for user stories flow. User stories sidebar. And it is just gonna return this for now. Okay, I'm not sure how interesting this is. User stories main. But I'm just gonna stream anyways. But this is gonna take some time because I need to refactor the chat as well. So here we actually have to like a sidebar wrapper. Where did like the big oh, here it is. So I think what we can do is say content so it would debug flow sidebar. So this would use the sidebar. Let's just call it sidebar. And let's rename this to sidebar. Yeah, I think we can put the tabs in there, but anyways, and then we have debug flow main. So I think I need to do it like this, and then the content is there. So this is going to be user stories sidebar and user stories main, user stories main. It's just insane how slow this project is getting. I don't like that. Workflow tabs, and then we have the tabs. Which is going to be part of the sidebar. So let's shove those in here. And then class names, I think I have a utility for that. I do. And then we have the tabs. So we're gonna, should we hard code them? Ugh, there's so much class name, small, hidden, like all this stuff. I don't care about this. Screen readers and so we kind of have, let's see. So this would be workspace state. So the sidebar needs to know about which flow is active. Does it really care about? No, it doesn't. It's like just current flow. Oh, but it knows that. So we would say, you know what? We're gonna do a little bit different. So I think sidebar should be here, and then we do sidebar, and then we do main. So for each of these, we're gonna say, oh, but we have to wrap them. God damn it. This is so annoying. This freaking UI I design. It's insanely annoying. No, it has to be like this. Oh my God, this is horrible. Flow equals debug. Where here the flow is user stories. And the only thing I really know need to do is flow would be debug or user stories. Oh. So this will be flow. And then on change, we're going to change the flow. And then we have, I think we can just list them for now. So this, we don't need a key. So this would be, this would actually be user stories or idea. I'm going to call it idea. Oh, debug. And then on change, we're going to do something. Oh, by the way, I can just refresh Electron now. I forgot. Oh. Oh, workflow tabs. We don't need you. Where did the tabs come from? Oh. Wait a minute. Is this the tabs? What the hell is this? Oh, sorry. This is the mini screen version. Ah, so annoying. So let's forget about this stuff. This is the one I want. Okay, so let's drop these two divs and these two divs and just have the nav there. So yeah, let's make these. Well, user stories. Ah, this is annoying. function tab. href, well, it's not gonna be an href. It's gonna be an onClick. I guess we can make it a button instead. And then we're just gonna have name or like label, or we can say children. And children is gonna be a string. I don't care about this. Active is a boolean. If it's active, and we don't need a key. Okay, so now we have a tab. So now we can just do this. We're gonna have one tab. Active if editor store. Yeah, so this is interesting. Already we see that oh wait, no, we can get, oh sorry, flow, sorry. Flow equals user stories idea. Flow equals debug. Oh my god, debug. Nice. Why are you complaining? State, get workspace. What the hell happened now? Oh, it's just, that's weird. Debug flow, no sidebar wrapper. Okay, let's see how it looks now. There we go. This is what I was envisioning. Hello debug, fine. Now we're gonna move to idea, or now we're gonna build up the initial states or flow states for the workspace. We're gonna pass them in, and then we're gonna list our user stories, and we're gonna add the implementation step. I need some food. I think I'm gonna stop the stream, and then I'm gonna continue working on this. And kind of just get the UI out of the way, because the interesting part here is like moving through these steps and all that stuff. So what's going to happen when this interface is kind of in its state where we can progress is that when I click idea, it has a set of user stories already stored. So it's just going to show those user stories. And I am, yeah, but you can't change them. Like, let's start with that. Now we're gonna have another one, which is called plan. And when you click plan, it's gonna have a big button, I guess. Like you have to start the planning. Like maybe it makes more sense when you're on idea. Yeah. So when you're on idea, you have the user stories. You have a big button called create plan. And that activates the planning tab, like it's not disabled anymore, and it moves to that tab. And then it basically just starts the flow of planning. And then you do all your things in there. And if you go to the end and you have an approved plan, we're going to store that plan. You'll still have your user stories in the idea, but now you'll also have a plan. And then when you have your plan, we're going to show that plan, and you can click a button called implement. And then it opens up the implementation tab. You move there and you'll see it start implementing. Yes, that's how it's gonna work for now, at least in its first version. And I'm not sure how much I'll get done for the demo. I have a feeling we'll get stuck in the planning, but at least that shows something, which is nice. Oh, what the hell? Cool. I'll stop the stream. I might start the stream again. It depends how bored I am fixing this and how fast I'll fix it. But yeah, thanks for following along. And yeah, and was it Valentine? It's Valentine, isn't it? I forgot. Let me check. Boop. Was it Valentine? Valentine. Yeah, Valentine. Thanks for jumping in with, like, I'm super excited to see what you've been working on. And there's so much exciting stuff happening on YouTube in general. People are building things. So it's just fun. Yeah. Doing stuff, exploring, learning, sharing ideas, and see what pops out. Yeah, cool. Bye.